One thing I love about this generation is our incessant questioning, from challenging politicians' promises to pharmaceutical claims to religious doctrines to established norms. We're fiends for scrutiny and I love us for it. But one industry seems to be immune to the wave of skepticism, the agricultural industry. Okay, the truth is I can switch up the word feminism in the title for any other social justice movement and come up with a dozen different ways the fight for animal rights applies to it. But feminism and animal rights are the causes that burn so intensely within me, it makes my eyes sting sometimes, so we'll start there. Food. It's deeply emotional, it's cultural, communal, euphoric, a comfort, sometimes even a sexual tool or embellishment. It has deep roots in every facet of our life, so it has managed to shield itself from the spotlight of inquiry. That, plus the massive marketing efforts designed to keep it that way. But this very shield should be what prompts us to examine the cause more closely. Before I really get into it, I want to be clear this is not an attack. I don't judge you for eating meat or wearing animals because I was once there myself. I already know the vast majority of you just want to live in a kinder world and are likely on the front lines of other important causes already. So I'm not trying to challenge your goodness, simply shedding a light on a shadowed place where maybe your values don't align with your actions. But at the same time, I also respect that you're probably an intelligent person, so I'm not going to baby this and avoid saying that what's happening isn't fucking morally reprehensible, and if you eat or wear animals, then you're directly fueling it. Sometimes that switch flips in an instant, like it did when I was 21. Someone's words just strike a nerve at exactly the right angle, and suddenly you see animals' plight for what it really is: merciless pain, torture, and agony. My aim is not to condemn, but simply to create awareness, provide a new perspective maybe, to be one more flick trying to light the bulb. If you've ever used the phrase treated like a piece of meat to describe a Chad staring at a pair of tits for too long, then this exploration is for you. Women throughout history and even today are fighting for access to reproductive care in pursuit of bodily autonomy. But when it comes to animals, our control over their reproductive system is essential to the meat and fashion industry. In fact, their reproductive capacity is what determines how their bodies will be controlled. And once they lose that capacity, they're murdered. In the most widely recognized scenarios, female cows undergo artificial insemination involving one arm inserted into the anus and another into the vagina, so they become pregnant and produce milk. Cows are specifically selected for reproduction based on the volume of milk they create. So the selective breeding has led to cows producing an excessive amount of milk, causing their udders to become overly heavy, crippling their hind legs, and subjecting them to excruciating suffering. Chickens are also victims of selective breeding, so we can maximize the fruits of their reproductive cycle. Besides just being confined to cramped cages, the physical strain that their bodies are put through to produce an unnatural amount of eggs makes them prone to health problems like skeletal disorders and nutrient depletion, causing increased susceptibility to diseases, so they die younger. When it comes to pigs, the females are confined to gestation crates, where they can't move an inch forward or back, and they're also subjected to continuous cycles of assault and pregnancy. The story is the same across industries and across animals. Minks, foxes, sheep, goat, rats, mice. From agriculture to fashion to sports to science to pharmaceuticals, female bodies are taken advantage of and forced into permanent reproduction until they're murdered when they're no longer able to give birth, or die from their bodies giving out. Imagine expecting the people who do this as their job to view a woman's reproductive cycle as belonging to her and her alone. It's inconsistent. Just as women across the globe fight for reproductive choice, animals too deserve the freedom to choose their destinies. As feminists, we advocate against a culture of sexual assault, so to consume raped and tortured bodies is a dissonance deserving examination. The use of lukewarm words, euphemisms to disguise a gruesome truth, is something women know all too well. A promising man instead of a rapist, child marriage instead of pedophilic slavery, revenge porn instead of sexual and psychological abuse. The same tactics are used to hide the truth behind our food. Cows aren't artificially inseminated, they're raped. Then we steal their children and their children's food. Pigs aren't slaughtered, they're tortured and murdered, forced into gas chambers where they burn from the inside out, always screaming for their lives. Male chicks aren't discarded. They're sent in masses through a grinder at 1 day old. Whether factory farmed or pasture raised, there's nothing graceful about it. Men use women in ways to boost their social status. A real man has a wife that other men will find attractive, who's equal parts empowered in the bedroom and obedient in public. A real man makes demeaning jokes towards that woman to get bro points. The meat industry's portrayal of a real man using animal flesh to enhance social standing is eerily similar. A real man eats meat, not tofu. That would make you a soy boy. A real man responds to videos of animals crying with, bacon, to get bro points. A real man trivializes animal and women's pain via dismissive humor to get bro points. In this way, women and animals are flattened into social tools, losing their multidimensionality. The meat industry knows this dynamic and encourages it, so we see toxic masculinity and commodification of women's bodies reflected in some of their advertisements, like Carl's Jr.'s "Everybody loves big breasts." Ads using women to sell products, dissect and reduce them to their most seductive body parts: breasts, butts, and lips. specifically just the body parts that serve a function for straight men's sexual pleasure.
When Tex meets Mex, it's a win-win. The Tex-Mex Bacon Thick Burger.
This dismemberment has even wormed its way into our vernacular. Are you an ass man? A breast man? Maybe the more fringe foot man? Similarly, a chicken is not a living animal, but a crispy drumstick. Not a pig, but a rack of ribs. Merely products to be consumed literally and figuratively, like the naked, hairless, female torso art trope, headless, armless, legless, forever disembodied and stripped of instruments of agency. Only a thing to take pleasure in, never to be pleasured. Have you ever felt like a piece of meat? Frequently, animals bred for consumption are depicted in demeaning ways to rationalize our mistreatment of them. A pig rolls around in its own filth. A chicken is so stupid it would instantly be killed in the wild. We're doing the world a favor by getting rid of them. Just as a woman is told she was stupid enough to dress like that, and therefore asked for it, or stupid enough to stay in that relationship and therefore it was her fault she was abused. By devaluing the victim's worth, the abuser evades accountability. In various societies, including the one that I was raised in, religious doctrines are used to assert control over women's lives, demanding they be modest, subservient, and in service to men. These doctrines often mask themselves as values aimed at benefiting women and protecting them, but they ultimately favor men, reinforcing power dynamics and impeding the progress of gender equality. Similarly, religious interpretations are employed to justify the exploitation of animals, which claim they were created for human consumption and use. This often extends to portraying the act of consuming animals as supportive of the balance of nature and divine design. This religious justification of mistreatment is a challenge faced by both women and animals. 3 of the biggest words in the feminist fight are objectification, exploitation, and, key, intersectionality. Exploitation is the act of unfairly taking advantage of someone or something for personal gain or benefit. Objectification is seeing the other as not a creature with desires and liberties, but as a tool or object. And intersectionality highlights how different forms of oppression and privilege intersect and interact. Applying these lenses to the animal rights movement reveals obvious parallels. As Shira Herzano, the legal advisor for the group Anonymous for Animal Rights, said, "The woman is measured by the value the man gets out of her. The animal is measured according to the value humans get out of it." There is a need for collaboration to foster a more compassionate world. Collectively, we can challenge societal norms, rejecting the notion that anyone should be relegated to just a piece of meat or a tool for someone else's benefit. To those who identify as feminists and yet dismiss animal rights, ask yourself whether the rules of empathy should apply universally or not. If your response to this is, "I'm a feminist, but animals aren't as smart as humans, so the rules don't apply," would you say the rule of do no harm applies to a dog, cat, human child, or an adult human with mental handicaps? And if your response is, "I'm a feminist, but we need animals to be healthy," I'll tag some long-term vegans in the bio. Checking them out may change your perspective. If your response is, "I'm a feminist, but animals taste so good," I ask you whether taking away an entire life is of equal value to a few moments of sensory pleasure. And if your answer to that is yes, then I know my words have not come to you at the right time or in the right way, but someone's hopefully will one day. Unless you're an actual serial killer, because they're the only ones who derive true joy from the torture of others. By embracing true intersectionality, we pave the way for a world where every being, regardless of gender or species, is granted the dignity and respect they deserve. True dismantling of the patriarchy will remain incomplete until the notion that any living being can be objectified for financial gain or personal pleasure disappears. As advocates of feminism, this is a crucial step toward reclaiming agency and empowerment, breaking free from the cycle of exploitation that fuels and sustains gender inequality. One thing that breaks my heart as I say all this is knowing that most of you caring and actually hearing the message I'm trying to give are likely women. We're statistically the ones who care the most because we bear the weight of oppression daily and can therefore empathize with other forms of it. So then we speak up, and in doing so we shoulder the burden twice, once as victims and once as activists. It's not fair, we shouldn't carry this burden alone. So send this to a man in your life who you think should be standing on the front lines with us, making room for more. Check out the links in the bio for more insights and resources, and thanks so much for listening. See you next time.